Having concluded the additional customization for our virtual lab, we will now proceed with the mandatory configuration for the xCAT components for our virtual cluster. The first thing we want to do is to establish which files we're going to be synchronizing. xCAT includes functionality to synchronize files from our SMS host to all of the managed compute nodes. The default OpenHPC method for user credential management for the xCAT stateless Slurm configuration is to distribute the user credentials from the SMS host to the compute nodes. While most production systems would use a central authentication service like LDAP, the virtual lab follows the same process as the OpenHPC recipe, where we distribute user credentials to all the compute nodes. This is a relatively simple way of implementing user credential management, but at the same time it can illustrate the flexibility of this xCAT feature for synchronizing files. In this morsel, we'll be following this section 3.9.5 of the OpenHPC recipe guide. We need to define the path for the xCAT synchronization list file, and we will keep that in /install/custom/netboot. The guide refers to chdef, which is an xCAT command, and there's an equivalent read command for that, where you would use chdef to make a change. We can use lsdef to list. So we'll cheat a bit. We'll copy this line. In this case, I didn't type out that long line. I just copy and pasted it, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to do if you're using either the OpenHPC guide or the video supplement guide for this section. When we run lsdef, it lists a lot of information for the OS image, CentOS 7.7. If you look at the OpenHPC guide, what it's wanting us to do, I've just pasted the same instructions that I'd put in the lsdef. What it wants us to do is to define synclists. If we repeat the same command on the bottom left, but now we grep for synclists, there's nothing there. And we can watch for that. And it's blank because there's nothing there. Switch to the top screen. When you run this command, it should now add that object definition, and it shows up in the lsdef. Now, as we mentioned, we'll be synchronizing the user credential management from the SMS host to the compute nodes, and in this particular implementation, we'll be synchronizing the etc password file, etc group file, and the etc shadow file. So what we want to do is declare the files we want to synchronize inside this compute.synklist file that we've created. Recalling that the first command we did was to create the custom directory netboot, and then we've defined compute.synklist up here. We'll see that that file doesn't exist. What we'll do is we'll watch for that file. We'll switch to the top screen, where we'll follow the commands from OpenHPC guide over here in the bottom right. First one being echo etc password, and we'll copy it to password, and we will echo this into the file compute.synklist. So what we're saying is, in the compute.synklist file, we want /etc password to be synchronized as /etc password on the compute nodes. Now when we run this command, we expect a file to be created in the bottom left. Now compute.list.synklist has finally been created, and the only line in the file says that etc password must be synchronized to etc password in the compute nodes. Going back to the top left, we want to now also synchronize etc group. Second line here, except now we have a double because we don't want it to create a new file, we want to append. Looking at the bottom left, we've appended a new line, Now 2 files are being synchronized on the synclist. Now we do it again for ETC shadow. And as before, we should expect in the bottom left a new line. So to recap, what we've done is we've created a compute.synklist file in the directory /install/custom/netboot. This file contains a list of all the files that are to be distributed from the host to the target machines in xCAT. And in this case, the target machines is the group that we are referring to as the compute group. In other words, synchronize all the files listed in compute.synklist to the target compute machines. It means every local user that is created on the SMS host will be stored in password. Those users will now be transferred to the compute nodes. If you have credentials for SMS host, they will be stored in one of these files, which will then in turn be synchronized to the compute nodes, allowing you to log into the compute nodes. Since we're also using Slurm in this virtual lab, we need to follow the same process of the synchronization list to import the global Slurm configuration file and the cryptographic key for Munge authentication library to the compute nodes. Following this section of the guide, watch the bottom left. As before, we now have 4 files that we're synchronizing to the compute group. And then finally, we need to do the same for the Munge file. Now we have 5 files that we'll be synchronizing to the compute group. As the OpenHPC guide is indicating, you can also run update node compute -f to force an update to the compute group for any synchronized files that you've added to the sync list.